Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Hartford. The duelists are back from lunch, and they are ready to take on round 3 of Swiss in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Championship Series tournament. Everybody is seated at their tables, and round 3, starting with 1,247 players, only 332 are remaining undefeated, and some of those duelists are going to be playing their first round of the tournament this round. Now, those would be our VIP players. Tell us about the VIP program, what that's like.
Oh yeah, the VIP program basically allows you to have static seating as well as the first 2 rounds free. You get to start off with a 2-0 record going into the tournament, so just already playing 2 less rounds, getting a little bit more sleep, some more time for food, just all the benefits you can imagine. And you just don't have to worry about it because you get to start round 3 2-0. And you get to sometimes just peek around, see what other people are playing, get a bit more of an idea of what the field looks like. I think overall it's one of the craziest incentives that you can have to win something like a VIP tournament.
And that's one of the advantages enjoyed by one of our featured duelists in our round 3 match. Here we go, round 3. VIPs are now in the event. Starting off, we have Mario V from New York, New York. His favorite card is Dante, Traveler of the Burning Abyss. One of those eternal classic disease monsters. And facing off against him is one of our VIPs for this event, Jesse K from Toronto, Ontario. His favorite card is Fairy Tale Snow, recently came back, and he's spent little to no time getting it into every deck he builds.
You can imagine Jesse's when he decides to make a deck list, one of the first cards in his deck list is just Snow, and you see what happens after that is up to him.
Yeah, just slap it in there.
Yeah.
7 cards will get in that graveyard one way or another, so why not?
Yeah, you might as well play one of the best cards ever printed, if possible.
Alright, start getting ready. Again, their score pads ready to go. One thing to always note when you are in these events is that your written score is king, so make sure that you're always writing it down. You can't just keep a calculator all of the life points on it. You need a written record.
Absolutely. It's definitely a lot easier to track. You can see on the page what life points have changed. It's easier to just look at, see what has been going for. It's easier to just confirm with your opponent as well.
Yep. And it's one of the things you are allowed to take notes about is the source of damage as well.
Definitely a lot easier to prepare game states when you have a good written track of everything that's happened in the game.
More important than ever, turns get really complicated these days, especially when you have really long chains. We saw in the breakout match with Flanders, for instance. All sorts of things can happen just off one normal summon in a Flanders match, for instance, and even more so in a Flanders mirror match. So being able to just have a record of where all these events came from can help take some of the mental strain off when you are going ahead and trying to resolve these complex situations.
Yeah, imagine playing Flanders turn into double Masquerade the Blazing Dragon. You know how many life points you have to pay for every single activation you play?
I hope it's 12, otherwise my math skills are a little rusty.
We'll see if either of these players will have to deal with something that problematic today. You see, Masquerade the Blazing Dragon is still a popular strategy within the Despia branded deck, and it's been a fairly popular one. We did see it round 1. Could see one of these players on it today.
It's one of those things that a lot has been made of some of them two at the same time, but realistically you only really need one, and then maybe like a good hard disruption card to go with it. A lot of the lines that get you to 2, I feel like they may be a little bit greedy, a little more prone to having big blowouts against you.
Yeah, a little bit specific to certain matchups for sure. Usually 600 doesn't really actually seem like a lot, but when it's just for every single action, and it's also alongside other things that are pressuring your opponent, it usually just means that they have to spend their resources to not their best interest.
All right, looks like the dice have been thrown, and we are about to get this thing underway.
Right. We're starting game 1 here. Let's see which player gets to start. It looks like Mario is getting the lead here. Oh, there.
Looks like a Swordsoul. Swordsoul of Logi.
Yep. Revealing Ashina as well. That's a pretty big tell. Usually if you're not leading with the Ashina, it's either that's the only worm/Swordsoul, any activator for Moya in the hand, or there is a copy of Swordsoul Strategist Longyon in hand as well. Yep, there it is.
There it is. Sends the Ashuna.
Now, being able to go from this position, able to summon Baron on the 5th summon, the most ideal time to be able to summon a Baron de Fleur in the Swordsoul strategy, getting a lot harder these days since the restriction on Auroradon, but opting to go for a bit of greedier play, going into Sinister Longyan, getting some draws in here.
That's a little shocking to me. You don't really see that first thing off.
Yeah,
And he's immediately punished by Nibiru for it.
Yeah, a card that has been losing popularity for sure. Mario opting to take advantage of it, not being played in many people's decks, but Jesse just looking at that kind of thing, preparing for it, and having Nibiru in his main deck.
Alright, so the one thing of note is that that token is, in fact, a normal monster. And that leaves the tennies all live.
Yeah, we see an Adhara coming from hand, and there is an Ashina in the graveyard able to use its effect, summon potentially one of the level 7s here, likely a Vishuddha, able to still make a level 8 Synchro, but nope, that is going to be met with Ash, Blossom, and Joyous Spring from the hand.
He's going to go into the Monk. Adhara's in the graveyard, managed to pick up Ashina.
And then that is a pass back to Jesse.
And now we're just counting up the attack points there.
Yep.
Now, the Longyan did get sent for a Synchro Summon. That means that its effect is able to activate, deal 1,200 damage. Just that incidental damage can make the difference between your opponent getting another turn and the game being over.
Absolutely. That is a very large Nibiru token as well, with over 4,000 defense and attack.
So next we'll see what Jesse's up to. Starts with Instant Fusion.
Alright, so this is easily one of the best cards that Jesse could have here. You can see that he's playing the Predaplant strategy. So if he already has ways to play in his hand, he can go for Millenniumize Restrict to protect himself from any interruptions from the hand. But if he doesn't, he can go straight into the new Predaplant fusion monster from Dimension Force, which is actually the full Predaplant combo by itself. On summon, it is able to add any Predap card from the graveyard, deck, or field, no, face up extra deck, so like a pendulum one, to the hand, and likely going to be searching a copy of Predaplanting.
It's one of those strange themes where the sequence of letters you need to make sure it's a theme is a little bit awkward when you write it out. So in this case, you need, Predaplant, Predapower, all of those kinds of words. And the letters that they all share is Predap.
You don't want to give it just Preda and get all the Predator cards or what have you.
Yep, that's not enough. You need one more. You gotta get one more. Get that one in there.
Alright, and now we get to have the monster's secondary effect, which is still just as good, acting like a lone fire emblem, able to tribute a monster on the field and summon a Predaplant monster from your deck. Going in.
It's the Darlintonia Cobra, which you might remember as the card you didn't want to draw.
Oh, I promise you, you still really do not want to draw this card.
That gets you a fusion or polymerization. In this case, it's branded fusion. Normal summons Albaz, the Fallen of Albaz, and fuses it away with the token. Token's a light monster.
Yep, able to go straight into Albion. Albion the Branded Dragon here. You're going to be able to banish from the graveyard to summon a fusion monster from the extra deck. It looks like he's going to be banishing the Albaz as well as the Predaplant fusion monster to summon a copy of Mirror Jade. Normally you would do this play with Branded Fusion, but he's still holding that Branded Fusion in the hand, not necessarily having to use it this turn. Oh, he's just going to go into battle phase. There should be enough damage already. Yep, very quickly done by Jesse here. Having the Nibiru timely for the power play that Mario had in his hand, as well as the Ash to just finish the job, and then having the instant fusion to just start the play and just get it all done.
Pretty impressive start there. So Jesse takes game one, and they are into the side decks. So how widespread do you think knowledge of the Predaplant deck is? So that the cards that really make this work just came out in Dimension Force. It's had one weekend of regionals and national championships. It seemed like. How widespread do you think knowledge of this strategy has gotten?
A lot more limited than everything else, I will say. It's one of those things where it's not particularly respected immediately, simply because Predaplant hasn't been one of those strategies that has seen a lot of success historically. And these cards have been out since, 2017 in Fusion Enforcers?
A long time.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that people often overlook them, especially since these cards are printed in common in Dimension Force as well. So those are the kind of cards that you just throw right away sometimes when you're like looking for the hollows. You're focusing on the ultras, you're focusing on the secrets, and you sometimes look over cards like Predaplant Biblis and the new Fusion monster as well, which were printed in common, that are actually just absurd cards.
Always a mistake, just skipping past the commons.
Yeah.
You're going to miss the Dino-Rest with Tanker Tops.
Absolutely. See, for those of you who are staying at home, make sure you go back and look at those commons that you might have. You might find insanely powerful cards like the Predaplant monsters that Jesse is utilizing today.
And it's really kind of like Predaplants have always been overshadowed because, as you mentioned, they came out in Fusion Enforcers, which also had
Alistair. Also a mainstay of tournaments.
Yep.
Almost to this day, not as popular as it is today, and Predaplant's finally taking it over as the primary fusion deck instead of Alistair, but still a little bit undermined by Alibert.
That's true as well. The Despia cards kind of taking over the throne of whatever the most relevant fusion deck is.
When you have a player as renowned as Jesse Kotton, though, opting to not summon the Alibers of the world and going for the Clematis Undues and trying to fuse into your Predaplant monsters, I feel like this deck can easily get more popular by the day. And I've seen how this deck plays. I've seen the merits of it. I do think it is actually very strong. And one of the merits of this deck is actually in this matchup here against the Swordsoul strategy because of the Predator counters that many of the Predaplant monsters give. The way the Predator counters work, any monster that has a counter automatically becomes level 1. This is not an effect that's attached to the monster, it is just the effect of the counter. So this is one of those things where if you're playing in Swordsoul and you just activate a card like Predaplanting, which on activation not only sends a Predaplant monster from your deck to the graveyard, but just gives every monster on the field a counter, it automatically turns every Swordsoul monster level 1, which means they're not going into their powerful synchro monsters. They do not have access to it. So unless they're randomly playing a copy of like a Lyrillist monster to go into Zeus or something,
right,
they're not really going to be doing anything. Maybe a Formula Synchron is more likely, but most of the time, you're not making anything in your action deck once a Predaplanting is activated.
And if you played in the Fusion Festival with Master Loom, you probably know about some of the other things that happen as a result of those Predator counters. Some of the Fusion monsters can negate the activated effects of monsters that have Predator counters, for instance, or automatically win battles of anything with a counter on it, or gain the attack points of it, things like that. So the Predator counters they're a tremendously valuable resource.
Absolutely. Looks like we're heading right into game 2 here. We'll see if Mario leads again. I think he might want to respect Nibiru a little bit more now that he knows Jesse's on it.
A little bit. I think that was just a big mistake, not going for Fleur there.
Okay, Moye revealed Moye a little weaker than the initial hand that we saw game 1, and immediately met with infinite impermanence. We'll see if he has the long yuan. Oh, it's got a straight pass, I believe. Yep, Jesse gets to draw for turn. That interaction from the hand proving extremely useful against the Swordsoul strategy.
Is that an ultimate?
Oh, absolutely.
He's got the ultimates, right?
Yeah, Jesse Kotton, of course he does.
Yeah, and the
Starlight.
Berries.
Absolutely.
Understood.
If Jesse isn't flexing, then what is he doing, you know?
Right. Showing up with automatic 2-0, starting after lunch, ultimate rares, Starlights, Predaplants.
I believe Jesse's main strategy is to actually intimidate his opponent and just getting the win.
Oh, he's building all sorts of different Predaplants there. We got Effect Veiler, Orphan Scorpio. That's one of the new ones. I think that's Biff.
Bufalicula.
Biff.
Yes.
Predaplant Biff, that's his name now.
Along with a copy of Predapractice, which is actually an insane spell coming from, I believe, Legendary Duels 5. Really powerful one, able to special summon a Predaplant monster from your hand and then immediately search any Predap card
Yep.
from your deck to your hand. It does lock you into fusion summons for the rest of the turn, though.
Interesting. Oh, and we got the Token Collector in there, too. Another useful card in this particular matchup. I think he's probably just going to go for game, though, right now, isn't he?
Probably not with the Prosperity, but I think...
Oh, it's half damage.
Yeah,
Right.
I think he's able to just set up something, at least, like, there were many copies of that Prosperity revealing that could just end in the full combo. Orphan Scorpio for sure is going to get there. potentially able to get it through a disruption as well if he's able to search for instant fusion instead of the branded fusion.
Tosses Fallen Albaz back.
It looks like if he's... Let's see if he goes for Darling Cobra immediately, or if he goes for Chlamydus Undo. Nope, he was going for Chlamydus Undo. That likely means he didn't already open Branded Fusion, and this is the more efficient line, because in this deck, you don't immediately want to activate Branded Fusion. You want to actually get to your fusion monster first and put it in either field or graveyard, so when you actually make your Mirror Jade, you get to use that instead of the Albion itself, because you want to leave the Albion on the field for the end combo, because when you fuse for your Dragostapelia at the end of the play, you're going to use the Albion, so during the end phase, Albion will set the new Branded Banishment that also came out of Dimension Force.
Yeah, Branded Banishment is kind of a scary card, reviving one of your monsters and then letting you fuse. And use your opponent's monster for it as well.
Absolutely. Pairs really well with Predaplanting as well. Predaplanting, we talked about how it gives both players counters on the field. We didn't talk about a secondary effect in the graveyard. If you fusion summon, you're able to banish it to destroy one card on the field.
Alright, and he swaps out into the Cobra, searches for Branded Fusion.
Right? We're going to see him likely just go for the full play here. Doesn't need to be overly aggressive, simply because he will not be able to do all the damage necessary. Now, usually another difference in this deck, you're often going for Albion straight. Lubellion is only there if you need to extend, or you're trying to summon the new ultra rare fusion monster from Dimension Force, the Predator Dragon. So likely we're going to see him sending a copy of Fallen of Albaz as well as Fairy Tale Snow. You know, the absolute favorite of Jesse Kotton.
Shocking. Shocking, I say.
Oh, it looks like he's actually changing it up a little bit. He's going to send Predaplant Biblis. So he's going for the Lubellion play. I was wrong. Which is interesting, because usually if you're going to do that, you would still send another copy of a card that's very rarely known as Stay Sailor or Marin from Lightning Overdrive, which has an effect when it's sent to the graveyard to send a plant monster from your deck to the graveyard. So also getting to the same end without having to discard the card off of the Lubellion.
So Biblis is going to give you another search.
Right.
And it can come, it's another one of those cards that uses the Predator counters. If there is a monster with the counter on the field, it can pop back out of the graveyard.
Nice and banish itself. Usually that's the one you want to send off the Predaplanting, but here it's almost always searching Bufalicula. Bufalicula in the scales allows you to fusion summon for a dark fusion monster using your hand and field. There it is. Okay, opted to go for this line. This play does not set up the banishment. Maybe it's a card that he actually cited out, or it's just already in his hand and he doesn't feel the need to.
So he's going to attack. Damage is going to be halved there. Oh no, did he banish it?
I believe he attacked. I don't think he has a reason to use the Mirror Jade right now, especially since, like, you had the option to go for Albion to set that up anyway. I think him choosing not to, there's no reason to burn the Mirror Jade effect yet. And there is two sets, so I have to assume one of those is the Branded Banishment. Opting to conserve his resources just that much more, keep all of his Albions in his extra deck.
Alright, so we've got Dragostapelia on there, along with Mirror Jade. And Mario's going to start out by special summoning Incredible Ecclesia and activating her effect to summon a Swordsoul or Fallen of Albaz from the deck.
And we do know that Mario actually does have another copy of Moye in his hand from the reveal of previous turn.
Alright.
So we're going for the Taya here.
Oh, it's called by the grave. It's going to take out that one Swordsoul monster in the graveyard. Now there is no worm. Taya is going to be stranded, unable to make a token.
Alright, it almost seems like a certainty that he sided out the Branded Banishment at this point and just didn't have any good value to search. Sure. He's activating the Moye, which technically he is allowed to do. It just will not resolve with any real value.
Yep. Jesse knows that he had that second Moye in there. So not only does he get to block the Taya effect by banishing what's called by the grave, it also negates the activated effects of every other copy of Moye for the next cycle of turns.
Absolutely. Now, another interaction that we didn't get to talk about is Dragostapelia, as you mentioned earlier, is able to put a Predator counter on a card, and its continuous effect is any monster with a Predator counter has its activated effects negated. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be from Dragostapelia. If you activate Predaplanting, its continuous effect will apply on those monsters that gain the counters in the chain. So you get to have another version of effect negation with that.
Long One's up next. He discarded an Adhara for that.
I believe you absolutely activate Predaplanting here just to make all those monsters level 1. Or you just get rid of the token. Both are reasonable.
Goes ahead and uses the Mirror Jade effect there.
It looks like he's going into a Shaman of the Tinyi now.
That's one way to get a tuner back.
Still... Yep, Tai is finally able to find the material to banish for its effect. Going to banish the Longyan. Ideal, usually one you want to potentially add back once Taya gets to send a worm.
Now that gets hit by Dragostapelia, placing a Predator counter on it.
Okay, so still has the Shaman available. It looks like there is an Adhara discarded off of the Longyan as well. Oh, looks like Mario will concede, though. Does not find a way to break through the board that Jesse has made.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. Jesse had a fantastic line of play in that second game. I think Mario, if he had gone for the Baron there in game 1, we could be saying something a little bit different right now. But he got punished very hard by that Nibiru, and Jesse able to 2-0 lead.
Yeah, that's one of those things where that's a meta call, right? Nibiru has not been popular in decks at all, simply because it hasn't been strong against decks like Despia, where they just don't summon that many times, or Swordsoul can usually set up a Baron, or previously Prankins was able to play under it really well. So it's just not a card you typically see being played, and that's something that Jesse took advantage of. But we'll be waiting to see more from Jesse's thoughts on that in the interview. But until then, a quick break.